So, hello everybody. Very warm welcome to everybody. Especially warm welcome if it's your first time here to one of these Tuesday nights. I know quite a lot of people have just finished the intermediate course, so yeah, very warm welcome to you. So you come at a good time because we're just kicking, if you have just come from that other class, because we're kicking off a new theme. So we're kicking off a new theme which will go on through into September. And the title of that theme is The Wheel, the Spiral and the Goal. So what I'm going to do tonight is give us a sort of whistle-stop overview of what we mean by the wheel, the spiral and the goal. So I'm going to give us a sort of overview, and then we're going to go into individual bits of it in much more detail in the talks over the next few weeks, because they're really very rich symbols, very rich symbols that I'm going to be talking about, which in a way sum up the whole of the Buddhist approach to things, really. So first of all, the wheel. So I'm going to talk about wheel, spiral and goal. First of all, the wheel. Well, specifically, what we're referring to here is the Buddhist wheel of life, which we've got on this flip chart. Which, as again, you can't see it, of course, so I've got an advantage over you. But it's a very rich symbol. It's a very rich symbol which sums up an enormous amount of Buddhist teaching. And it's got many meanings, and I'll say a bit more about it later. But first of all, I'd just like to say that it's really important to realise that this wheel is a symbol of something quite general. It's a symbol of something quite general. It's a symbol of the way we get into, unless we're careful, we get into never-ending cycles of behaviour. We get locked into cycles. We go round and round, and nothing new ever happens. And the main characteristic of times when we're really stuck on the wheel is that we allow the past to dictate how we act in the present. So our present actions are conditioned, dictated by the past. And then our present actions create the future. So the past determines the present, which creates the future, and round we go. Round and round we go, with no way out. So there's a never-ending cycle with no way out. And we see examples of this sort of vicious circle everywhere, actually. If we look at our own behaviour, if we look at human behaviour in general, classic examples are things like addictive behaviour. Say smoking. Because I have smoked in the past, I smoke in the present, and the fact that I smoke in the present makes it much more likely that I smoke in the future. And so round and round we go. Because I think of myself as such and such a sort of person, a timid person or an aggressive person or whatever, because I think of myself as such and such a person, I act in such and such a way in the present, which makes me more of that sort of person in the future. Round and round we go, digging our ruts deeper and deeper. And we'll continue to go round those ruts until we do something different. And we see this sort of vicious cycle that the wheel illustrates, acted out not just in our own personal sort of patterns and cycles and habits, but also on the huge stage of history. You see it acted out on the huge stage of history. I think a classic example, you could see a classic example in the 20th century and moving on into the 21st century. The First World War. The Germans lost the First World War. Really sort of punitive reparations were demanded of Germany, which ruined the German economy. So there was great poverty in Germany. There was poverty and the German economy collapsed. And as is the way of things, people looked for someone to blame, and the Nazis came along and said, the Jews are to blame. So then we had the Holocaust. And then as a result of the terrible things that happened in the Holocaust, we had Zionism and the creation of Israel. And because of Zionism and the creation of Israel, we had the injustices done to the Palestinians. And because of the injustices done to the Palestinians, we had a great deal of resentment against the West that supported the Israelis, and we had the Two Towers incident, we had terrorism. Because we had that, we have the war on terror, so we go around beating people up. And so it goes on. The Buddha said, not by hatred is hatred ever ended. Hatred is only ever ended by love. And while we're acting on the past, the wrongs of the past, we go round and round in circles, not just in our own lives, but in the history of the world. So the wheel represents this whole reactive tendency, this tendency of us human beings to go round and round in vicious circles, to get stuck in circular reactive patterns of behaviour, reacting to the present on the basis of the past, rather than creating something new for the future. It happens both in our own little lives and on a huge stage of history. So the wheel, what the wheel represents is that problem. It represents the normal, unenlightened human condition, because all too often that's how we behave. All too often, if we look closely at our lives, what it consists of is loads and loads of cycles, loads and loads of patterns that continue from day to day, from year to year. But, so, okay, that's a sort of bit about the general meaning of the wheel. But we've also got this very, very specific representation, this very, very specific symbol, the traditional Buddhist wheel of life. So I'm going to say I'm going to give us a real rapid tour of that. I have my special stick with me. So watch it. At the very centre of our wheel, we've got the thing that drives it round. We've got the things that drive it round. And there's a picture of a pig, a snake, and a cock. And they represent greed, hatred, and delusion. So they represent the way we approach life by grabbing what we want and pushing away what we don't want. And crucially, the fact that because we're deluded, we grab at things that don't actually benefit us or make us happy, and we push away things that don't actually threaten our real well-being. It's not that it's not that desire and, if you like, wishing to avoid things is wrong in itself. It's that the way we do it is based on delusion. There are things we should desire. There are things we should really desire because they're genuinely good for us. We should really desire friendship. We should desire maybe a meditation practice. We should desire a meaningful life. We should desire a supportive community to belong to. These are good things. We should desire them. And there are things we should try to avoid. We should try to avoid unskillful behaviours. We should try to avoid... what else should we try to avoid? I'm sure it's got something in here. Anyway, loads of things we should try to avoid. Getting run over, that would be a really good thing to try and avoid. Anyway, yeah, there are things we should... disharmony in our relationships, we should try and avoid that. Addictive behaviours, getting stuck in addictive behaviours, we should try and avoid that. So the grabbing and the pushing away, the problem with the grabbing and the pushing away that the pig, the cake, and the snake and the cock represent is that they're deluded grabbing and pushing away. We grab at things that aren't going to bring us happiness. We push away things that aren't going to hurt us. In fact, very often the opposite. So we want short-term pleasures, for example, even when these are gone in a flash and harm us rather than bringing happiness. So the smoker wants his cigarette. We want our junk food, although our waistline is growing. Or maybe we want material things. Maybe we want lots of stuff, a bigger house, a bigger car. Although it's somehow never worked in the past, but maybe if I get an even bigger one or an even more up-to-date phone, suddenly I'm going to be happy. So we want those things, although what that does is just tie us in to a cycle of working in a job that we really find quite meaningless, quite unfulfilling, etc., etc. Or else maybe we want security. Maybe we want a nice big bank balance and a big pension so that we've got security. And as a result, we live out life without taking any risks. So we end up living a life which makes us boring and dead, and we don't get security anyway, because there's no such thing. We're blobs of protoplasm on a rock, hurtling through space at great speed, and security is a bit of a strange thing for us to want, actually, in that circumstances. Or maybe, what else maybe? We might want status. We might really grab at status. I want to be a big name. If we get it, well, it doesn't actually make us happy. In fact, it just inflates our ego, which cuts us off from other people, which makes us more and more unhappy. Or maybe we want everybody, we want to be really popular. We want everybody to really like us. We want to be approved of. So we go along with the crowd. We do what's expected of us all the time, what our sort of peer group expects, what our family expects. We live the way we're expected to live, and that just means that we never really live our own life. So we never really become happy. So all these things, all the ways that we humans try for things that don't really work. So that's what's at the centre of the wheel. It's all that deluded greed and hatred, or we could say grabbing and pushing away, based on delusion. We don't actually seek those things that are going to benefit us, and we don't actually avoid those things that are going to harm us. In fact, all too often, exactly the opposite. So that's what's at the centre of the wheel. And then, if we go a bit outside that centre, that's driving it around. That's the sort of motor. And then outside that, we've got this funny thing where these really cheerful-looking people in a white bit going up. And there are these really glum-looking people in a dark bit going down. And that represents that when we go round and round on the wheel, sometimes things might seem to be going really well. And we might think, this is great. We'll be going up, but that will always, on the wheel of life, be followed by a fall. We'll go down again. There's no lasting, real happiness to be found as long as we're on this wheel. It's all very temporary. To find real lasting happiness, we're going to have to get off the wheel. We're going to have to escape. And more about that later. So we've got people going up, people going down. And then outside that, we've got what takes up most of the space here, which is quite detailed and you won't be able to see. And this is what's called traditionally 6 realms, 6 places, if you like. 6 places we could spend time in while we're going round and round on the wheel. Okay? But they're not real places. They're states of mind or states of being. So they're called realms. The realms we can inhabit. Traditional realms of existence. So in traditional Buddhism, they're usually seen as, if you like, actual places that we can be reborn. Actual places that we can be reborn, which will express the sort of being we are. So, the place we get, the idea is the place we get reborn is, in a way, it suits us. It's an expression of our inner state. That's the tradition. But they can just as well be seen as states of mind that we all experience. They're states of mind that we all experience. They're states of being we all spend time in. And the place we live is our state of mind, if you like. Our state of mind is the place we live, so they are very much realms. And we can meet beings in each of these 6 realms. If we go out around Sheffield for a day, we'll meet people in every one of these 6 realms, possibly except one. And we'll get to that. But on the bus, there are people in all these realms. So what are they? And also, we spend our time in several of these realms, probably. So what are they? Well, up here, where are we? Up here. This one's backwards. It's backwards. It's confusing me. Here, it's going around the wrong way. Here, it's usually there. Here, we have what's called the realm of the Asuras, the realm of the Titans, if you like. And this is the realm of the big egos. This is the realm of competition. Power. So you get bits of Asura realm in big businesses. In politics is a great place to find Asuras. These are people who thrive on competition. They love competition. What their life is about winning in competitive situations and having power, exerting power over others. The Asuras. So yeah, the realm of the big egos, the realm of competition. I suppose we see a little bit of that. Something like two huge men facing each other at tennis at Wimbledon, whacking down serves at 130 miles an hour and nearly take your head off. A couple of Asuras, a couple of people at least stepping into their Asura being for that few hours and really sort of having a go at each other. The realm of the egos. And then moving around from the Asura, the hungry ghost, the Titan realm, we get the realm of the hungry ghosts, the praetors or the hungry ghosts. Now, this is it's a sort of desert, and the beings in this desert have got these huge bellies, and these tiny throats, and these tiny mouths. So the belly's huge appetite, tiny inability to satisfy that appetite. And indeed, so they're constantly, they never get enough food. They try to get food and water, but then that food and water turns into knives. So sometimes they show with sort of knives sticking out of them all over the show. So yeah, this is the realm of addiction. This is the realm of the addicts. This is the realm of those whose desires can never be satisfied. The more they get, the more we get when we're in this realm, the more we want. And the things we're so addicted to, the things we so desire, they can never satisfy because we haven't got a big enough throat. They can never satisfy, but they harm us instead. So the classic hungry ghost would be the sort of drug addiction of some sort where, the very things that we're craving, we're going for, are actually killing us basically. But we see it in any form of what we call neurotic craving, really, that the things we're questing for aren't helping. They're just fueling our thirst. They're just making us want it more and more and causing more and more suffering. So that's the realm of the hungry ghosts. And then we have the hell realm. The hell realm. Now this isn't a place people are sent to for being bad. This is just an expression of the fact that there are certain states of mind which it is hell to be in. There are states of mind that it is hell to be in. So this is the realm of seriously unhealthy, seriously painful mental states. And probably most of us have spent a little bit of time there at some point or another in that sort of hell realm. Now moving on from the hell realm, we come to the realm of the animals, which always looks to me a little bit like a David Attenborough documentary. So there's nice playing with things wandering around, and all it's quite idyllic really, but it's the animal realm. And in this realm, the beings are totally focused on their physical drives, totally focused on food, sex, and physical pleasure, and of course fear, which dominates the life of a lot of animals. So the beings in the animal realm, they are in a way totally trapped in the present. They don't learn from the past, and they don't plan for the future. They don't set any direction for the future. So, I probably spent time in the animal realm on the odd beach holiday, you can sort of enjoy it for a while. It's probably nice for a while, but there's a lot more to us than that. And so the animal realm is ultimately very unsatisfying, and there's no spiritual dimension or even cultural dimension, so there's no way up and out of the animal realm. And animals get old and they get sick, and it's no fun to be an old and sick animal if you haven't developed other parts of yourself, other resources. So that's the animal realm. And then moving on round from the animal realm, we come to the human realm. The realm of us lot, the human realm. This is a realm So humans can live in all of these realms, but this is the realm in which we're genuinely human. We're genuinely human if we live in this realm. This is a realm in which we take responsibility. We cooperate with others. We come together with others and we cooperate. We form friendships. We form community. And the crucial thing about the human realm is that there is just the right balance between happiness and suffering to allow us to get enlightened. So beings in the hell realm are not going to get enlightened. They're just totally overwhelmed by their suffering. Beings in the hungry ghost realm are totally overwhelmed by their craving, which causes suffering. They can't do it. And if we have no suffering, there's no motivation to develop either. So we need just the right balance, we need something to work with, we need some challenge. But we also need to be able to enjoy things and have happiness. So the crucial thing about the human realm is that that's the place where there's a right balance of pleasure and pain, if you like, that allows us to get enlightened, that allows us to develop spiritually, that allows us ultimately to step off the wheel. So yeah, escape from the wheel is most likely from the human realm. And then we come around to what sounds like a great place, which is the God realm, the realm of the gods. This is the place that you might not actually meet somebody in on the Sheffield Omnibus, but you might. So the God realms, not gods as we understand them, okay? Not gods as we understand them. Traditionally, the beings in the God realm, what we call the God realm, are enjoying constant states of refined pleasure and beauty because of their past good karma. They're beings who've created immense good karma but haven't escaped the wheel, so they're just having a really lovely time. They're just having a really lovely time. And traditionally, in Buddhism, it's traditionally seen that we can spend time in the God realm. We can spend time in these lovely, refined, beautiful states of mind in meditation. In meditation, we can visit the God realm. We can spend a bit of time in the God realm. In these beautiful, refined appreciation of beauty. So that's the sort of tradition, but I suppose at a more down-to-earth level, we could see the God realm just as a state in which there's no suffering. It's just a state in which there's no suffering. There's just pleasure, not the sort of very, very superficial pleasure of the animal realm, but the pleasure of beauty, the pleasure of the arts. There's just that sort of pleasure. And maybe some humans who are emotionally very healthy, quite responsive to beauty, quite open to beauty and the arts, have a lot of freedom from responsibility. Maybe such people can spend time in the God realm for a while. The problem with the God realm is that, one problem with the God realm is it's not a place you can get enlightened. Strangely enough, it might sound like it's the greatest place of the lot, but you can't get enlightened from the God realm because there's no doorway out of the wheel in the God realm, because to really develop spiritually, we need a bit of grit in the oyster. We need things to work on. We need some suffering, actually. We need something that instigates us to rise above ourselves. And we've got nothing that sort of asks us to do that if everything is just lovely all the time. Well, why would we move if everything's just lovely all the time? So that's one problem with the God realm, is that you can't get enlightened. And a second problem, which is much more probably immediate, is that it's not going to last. It's not going to last. God realm's not going to last. You might go on for quite a long time, but something's going to happen. Some suffering's going to impinge somewhere. You're bound to fall from the God realm. You can't stay there all the time. And there's a real danger that if you spend all your time in the God realm, you become so sensitive and so refined that suffering is just going to be unbearable. You won't have the same resources to deal with it as somebody who spent time in, say, the human realm. So you end up suffering even more in the end. So those are the 6 realms. Those are the 6 realms that take up most of this. And we'll go into a lot more detail about those in future talks. Then around the edge of our wheel, we've got these 12 strange, mysterious hieroglyphs. So there's some people who are running a boat. There's a person on a pot with a potter's wheel. There's a woman offering a man a drink. There's a guy with an arrow in his eye. There's somebody picking apples. So these strange hieroglyphs, if we can decipher them, they show the technicalities of how the wheel works. They're the sort of diagram of how this wheel works. How our past conditions our present responses, and how our present responses create the future. That's what they show. And they also, I'm not going into any detail about that now, it'd take at least a whole talk to talk about that. We'll look at it a bit later. But I will say this, that these mysterious hieroglyphs, a bit like hieroglyphics, mysterious hieroglyphics on the side of an Egyptian long-buried tomb, they hide a secret. This is getting into real sort of Indiana Jones territory now. They hide a secret. There's a secret in there. If we can decipher them, they tell us where the secret door is that can get us out of the wheel. So I think we could use an analogy for the wheel of life. I think we could use the whole wheel of life. An analogy for the wheel of life is it's like an enormous computer game, okay? It's like an enormous computer game. Maybe set we could imagine an enormous ancient castle. And inside this castle there are all sorts of interesting rooms and chambers and spaces where you can do all sorts of interesting things and get all sorts of points for this and that. You can spend all your hours clocking up points in the God realm and the human realm and the Asura realm. And these points seem to give meaning to what we're doing. But in fact, all the points we score in all the different realms are completely meaningless. Because the only point of the game is not to score points in these different realms and chambers and rooms. The only point in the game is to escape from the castle. The castle is in fact a prison. And all these other places are just put there to distract us from the real goal of the game, which all the sort of real gamers know, the aficionados, they know this. The goal is to get out. The goal is to get out of the castle, to find the hidden door, to escape. That's the only point. And these hieroglyphics around the edge tell us the secret. They tell us the secret of how to find the door and get out of the prison castle. But we'll come to that in a future talk. But if we do find the door, if we do decipher the hieroglyphics, get into the right chamber, find the door, we find ourselves in the next bit of our theme, the wheel, the spiral, and the goal. We found ourselves on the spiral. So what I'd like you to do is imagine our wheel lying flat, like a cartwheel lying on the ground. So our wheel is lying flat, and there's a door on it, which we need to find. And arising from this cartwheel lying on the ground, there is a spiral, going up and up and up and up towards the goal. And if the wheel symbolised the way our past usually determines our present and creates our future, then the spiral symbolises the very opposite. It symbolises what happens when we use our power to choose to do something creative and different, which isn't determined by our past. When we don't behave as the person we think we are, or the person that conditioning and our history has made us think we are. When we choose to do that uncomfortable new thing that takes us out of our comfort zone. When we choose to do something creative that will bring new future possibilities into existence. That's what the spiral represents. So when we do that, instead instead of going around the same old circle, we set up a spiral. We set up a spiral of what we tend to call progressive conditionality. Whereas we've had reactive conditionality, round and round and round, we get progressive conditionality. And in progressive conditionality, instead of one thing leading to the same old thing, one good thing leads to another good thing, leads to another good thing, leads to another good thing, until eventually we get to a place that we could never have envisaged when we made the first creative action. Takes us places that we could never have imagined when we made that first little step into the unknown. So in Triratna, we tend to emphasise one particular version of this spiral path, 12 positive steps on this spiral path, because it appears in the Pali Canon. The closest we get to the discourses, to the actual words of the Buddha. It's in there, and it leads right off the wheel all the way up to the goal of enlightenment. So that's the one we tend to focus on. But there are lots of examples of that sort of conditionality that we could think of ourselves. We could think of loads ourselves, where one good thing leads to another good thing, leads to another good thing, instead of going around in circles. And there are actually quite a lot of different versions of this spiral in the Buddhist writings, in the Pali Canon. So, I mean, for now, just to think, we might think of one example we've probably all experienced, which is that we've all, at some time or other, decided to do something different and creative by not doing what we usually do on a Wednesday evening, but going to a Buddhist centre. Going to a Buddhist centre and doing a class. Taking that one creative decision. So we come along to a class. Maybe we experimented with practicing the precepts as a result of what we heard on that class. Maybe we started consciously trying to be a bit more kind and a bit more generous and honest. And then maybe we noticed that actually our relationships improved. And maybe we started to meditate. We learned meditation. Maybe we started to meditate. And we started to experience better mental states, a bit more calm and a bit more metta. And then maybe some of us decided to go on retreat. We liked that meditation and we saw the results, so we decided to go on retreat where we put ourselves in very good conditions to meditate. And our meditating deepened, and we had an experience of a whole new range of mental states that we didn't even know existed before. New experience. And eventually, if we stuck at it, maybe we found ourselves living a whole life that we could never have imagined when we took that first little step over the threshold of a Buddhist centre. So it's an example of progressive conditionality. It's an example of how one good thing can lead to another, to another, to another, to another, until eventually we end up in a place that we would never have imagined we never imagined when we took that first step. So that's just one example of a sort of positive spiral. We might see it all over the place. I think we see it all the time in our lives, that when we're in a good space, we tend to make good decisions which put us into a better space. Whereas when we're in a bad space, we make bad decisions that put us in a worse space. So I think we see these sort of positive spirals all the time. Examples of where we take a creative decision, we do something different, and that leads to progressively better things happening. And if we use this principle of progressive conditionality, if we set up enough of these positive spirals, we'll find ourselves on an upward spiral path that would eventually lead to the goal, the goal of Buddhism, which is enlightenment, Buddhahood, complete liberation and freedom. So we can imagine our wheel lying flat, our spiral coming off the wheel, and leading up to the goal, which we might see as the Buddha, if you like. Because the Buddha seated in meditation is the most common symbol that we use in Buddhism of the enlightened state, of the goal that we could all reach, of the potential that we could all reach. So that's the seated Buddha is, we could use that. The seated Buddha may work for us, but no one symbol can really sum up what enlightenment's like, I don't thing, what enlightenment is about. Really do it justice. The seated Buddha, well, I suppose we could say, well, it looks a bit passive, doesn't it? It looks a bit as though enlightenment just means sitting there enjoying the bliss of nirvana. Not caring about anyone else. So some people would prefer a walking Buddha, a Buddha who is so enlightenment active in the world, the enlightenment acting in the world for the benefit of others. But then again, a single Buddha figure seems to imply that enlightenment is something sort of that we enjoy in a sort of ivory tower, completely cut off from others. There's no other people around. And maybe it doesn't seem to tell us very much about the inner experience. So another possible symbol of enlightenment, which I happen to like a lot, is what is called the Pure Land. So the Pure Land is a beautiful, blissful realm, full of light, full of beautiful sounds and music, with flowers that are made out of light, and where the streams and the leaves of the trees make beautiful music, and where the very touch of the water or the air brings us absolute delight. And this delight is shared with others because there are other people in the Pure Land. So maybe the image of the Pure Land gets across more of the inner experience of enlightenment, that the inner experience of enlightenment is one of joy and beauty and delight. Nirvanang paramang sukhang. Nirvana is the supreme bliss, so it gets across that it's blissful. And all this joy and beauty isn't just something that we enjoy in splendid isolation, because the Pure Land is a place of deep connection with others, even communion with others. So the Pure Land, we can have that as our goal at the top of our spiral. And then another symbol of enlightenment might be what's called the mandala of the five Buddhas. A lot of us will know what that is, but some of us won't, so I'll say a little bit more about it. The single Buddha image carries quite a lot of meaning if it's trying to get across the whole of enlightenment, because enlightenment includes an enormous number of positive qualities. So what we find happening as Buddhism develops, it's a bit as though that single ray of light, which represents enlightenment, the white light, gets split by a prism into different coloured lights, which represent different aspects of enlightenment. And the mandala of the five Buddhas is a sort of layout of different coloured Buddhas with different qualities representing different aspects of enlightenment. That's a slightly simplistic way of looking at it, but I've got 5 minutes. So we get that sort of cool blue wisdom that makes us immune from mere passing events. One Buddha representing, among other things, that. We get the golden generosity of enlightenment. It acts like sunlight on others. We get the warm love for all beings. Another Buddha represents that warm love for all beings. Another Buddha on the mandala represents fearlessness and the unstoppable success of the enlightened mind, the unstoppable success that fearlessness leads to. We've got different wisdoms represented. So one Buddha represents the wisdom that sees the sameness of all things, the connectedness and the sameness of all things. Another Buddha represents the apparently completely opposite wisdom, which is the wisdom that sees the unique beauty of all things. Every leaf on that tree is uniquely itself. There's not another one like it, and it's beautiful. And every person likewise. So there's this, it manages to get across a huge amount about the nature of enlightenment. So in the last part of our series on the wheel, the spiral and the goal, we'll be looking at some of these symbols. We'll be looking at enlightenment, what's it about. We're looking at how we can get some idea of what it is and how we can symbolise it. So that's the goal, last part of our series. That's what that will be about. But to finish off, I'd just like to explore this idea of the goal a bit more, and how having an idea of our goal can help us to make progress on the path. So there's a phrase, I think, that's sometimes used in Tibetan Buddhism, which goes, bring the goal onto the path. Bring the goal onto the path. And it seems to be implying the goal isn't just something that's way up there, at the end of the spiral path, that's so long that we can't imagine getting to the end of it. The goal isn't just way up there. The goal can also speak to us right here, where we are now. So we may be still firmly on the wheel. We may be still clocking up pointless points in one of the chambers on the wheel of life. Yeah, great, 3,000. We may be still doing that, absolutely involved in one of these realms. But the goal of enlightenment can reach us right here, right now. So earlier I talked about the 6 realms on the wheel of life. And in each of these realms on the wheel of life, there is a Buddha. So the Buddha isn't just up there at the very top of the spiral path. The Buddha is also right here in each of those realms, right in the wheel of life. Offering beings in that realm exactly what they need to progress when they're in that state. So the goal isn't just the Buddha figure way up there. The goal in the shape of the Buddha can also speak to us right here, in whatever state we're in whatever realm we're in. And I think that's really important because we need to connect with that. We need to let our connection to enlightenment, we could say that being the Buddha being in each of those realms is our connection to enlightenment. We need that. We need to allow that connection to enlightenment to speak to us. We need to listen to it. We may even need sometimes to pretend that we're already enlightened. We could have a go at that. So pretend we're already enlightened, act as if we were enlightened, or at least a bit more enlightened than usual anyway. We could have a go at that. So we need to reach forward into the future, toward the future self that we could be. So that what we do now is determined more by the future self we could be than it is by the past self that we've been. That's what acting as if we were more enlightened will do for us. So I think we could have a go at that. We need to bring the goal onto the path. But of course, one problem with that is that we might think that enlightenment, the Buddha, is just so far off, and it's such a long path to reach it, that, it's just a gaping chasm between that and us and that. It doesn't really seem to have any sort of motivating power. Just too far away, we can't imagine it. But even if that's the case, we still need a goal. I mean, that's the nature of being humans. Humans are sort of goal-seeking animals. Not animals, goal-seeking beings. We work towards goals. If we don't have a goal, well, generally we just sort of sit around and do nothing, really. I mean, we don't make any effort. And if we don't make any effort, we don't get anywhere. But a goal that seems impossible, a goal that seems so far off and so far away, that it seems impossible, that's no better than having no goal at all. So we need a goal that we can imagine actually achieving in some sort of length of time that we can imagine doing it in. There's a lovely little parable in a Buddhist sutra called the White Lotus Sutra. And in this parable, a guide, who is obviously the Buddha, is leading a group of people across a desert. Okay, he's leading a group across a desert, and he's leading them to the Pure Land. He's leading them to a fabulous place. But they traipse for days and days and days across this desert, and they haven't got much food, and they haven't got much water, and they're tired and hot and thirsty. And eventually they all sit down and say, right, that's it. I'm not going any further. I don't believe in this place you're taking to us. I don't see it. Let's just stay here. There's a bit of water here. Let's just stay here. So what the guide does is he summons up a magic city on the horizon. So by his magic, this beautiful city appears on the horizon. He says, all right, well, maybe we're not going to make it to the Pure Land, but let's go over to that wonderful city. And they all go, oh, yeah, okay. And they all go and they enjoy this magical city for a while, and then he makes it disappear and says, well, that was nice, but hey, look, there's another magical city over there. Let's go to that one. All right, we go to that one. And eventually they move towards the the Pure Land. So what these magic cities represent is intermediate goals that can inspire us, intermediate goals that we can actually see, that we might get to, that we can work towards. Buddhahood might seem so far off we can't get a glimpse of it, but we need a magic city. We need a magic city. We need an intermediate goal that we can imagine ourselves achieving in the sort of medium term, if you like. So I'd like to finish by just asking you to give some thought to what might be an intermediate goal for you. Something you can actually work towards. What progress, spiritual progress, would you like to see yourself making in the next 6 months, a year, maybe? Would you like to have a really solid, regular meditation practice, maybe, for example? Would you like to develop your metta-bhavana so that it really becomes an effective tool and you really affects the way you think about others and are with others? Would you like to make some inroads in some pattern that you'd rather not have? Would you like to learn more about one particular aspect of the Dharma? What might be a good intermediate goal for you over the next 6 months, year, 2 years? Something you can imagine and something you can actually work towards. Not that that's the only thing we would do, but we humans are goal-orientated animals. So I'd like to just encourage you to think about how you could bring the goal onto the path, but in some form that really is going to work for you in the immediate sort of term. So, as I said, over the next few weeks we'll be exploring all these different aspects of these fascinating symbols in a lot more detail. But I hope I've just managed to give you a bit of an overview for tonight. Thank you.